Hi guys, welcome to Sensible Soul. My name is Nicole, and today I kind of wanted to do something a little bit different. I kind of wanted to get a little bit personal with you guys because this whole time I've been explaining my philosophies on spirituality without ever taking the time to explain why I started pursuing this knowledge in the first place. And so that's what I wanted to do today, because a lot of my close friends and family were a little bit confused by it and even kind of seemed to turn a blind eye towards what I was doing, and I want you guys to understand why I think it's important, because I wouldn't be sitting here making videos and spending all the time editing them if I didn't think there was a good reason. And so I kind of wanted to take the time to explain where I was coming from, because I think that you, even if you're not spiritual, might recognize yourself in my story. I was never a religious person. I grew up atheist, and then my parents baptized me kind of like as a just in case measure. So I spent the majority of my life not believing in God, not believing in an afterlife. My belief was probably pretty similar to the majority of people, that my consciousness or my mind was just a byproduct of the chemical combination in my brain, and my personality was nothing more than those chemicals combined with my memories and past experiences, creating everything that I am. I really just thought it was body and mind. I did not believe in a soul. The older I got, the more I started to question this belief. The more I started to poke holes and say, wait a minute, is that really all that's going on here? And so that's when I shifted more into like an agnostic mindset rather than an atheist one. I would try and quiet this chatter in the back of my head with what I like to call agnostic proverbs, which I would tell myself repeatedly: you're never going to fully figure it out. There's no point in trying to figure out what happens after you die. You'll figure it out when you die. Focus on living. There's no point. Because there's no way my tiny human brain will ever be able to comprehend whatever happens after death or God or whatever. So I'm just going to chalk it up to I don't know, and I'm never going to be able to fully figure it out and just stop trying to figure it out. And eventually this questioning going on in the back of my head, paired with always trying to repress it and focus on practical things and stuff like that, the more it led me to a depression. After some pretty traumatic stuff happened to me, I knew that there was a soul. I knew that there was more than just my mind. At a certain point I realized that all of my pain, all of my suffering, all of my anxiety was all stemming from this lack of understanding and false beliefs about consciousness, my own consciousness, and ultimately myself and what that really means. So that is what I set out to do. I set out to really find myself. And I mean really find myself and really truly understand consciousness. And this pursuit of myself and pursuit of an understanding of consciousness is what I like to call spirituality. And I have a video explaining what I believe spirituality to be if you want to check that out as well. I kind of talk a little bit about how throughout this whole process, throughout this whole seeking of understanding and breaking down old beliefs, I never wanted to give up my logical, rational mind. Even though to some outsiders, it might have seemed that I completely abandoned my logic and rationale by even speaking about these topics. For a lot of people, when they even hear third eye or chakra, they immediately shut off to it. It's immediately invalidated. Whatever comes after those words is probably bullshit. And that's how a lot of people saw me, a lot of close family and friends. And what I tried to emphasize so much with talking about crystals and witchcraft is that there is so much more logic to it than even I expected to find. When I first started getting into spirituality, I expected to come across things that were just too out there to accept, too woo-woo, too crazy. I was so surprised to find almost the complete opposite. I also want to point out that there's more to it than just logic. There's more to it than just what can be understood with the rational mind. And this is something that a lot of people have a hard time understanding and accepting, that there is a bit of an intuition to it. There is a bit of something abstract that can't quite be quantified to it. And I think this is something people struggle with the most. That's actually probably the easiest part, if you kind of like get out of your own way. Because the logical aspect kind of gives you the language and tools to communicate your spiritual understanding. And I feel like the understanding of it is a lot more intuitive. It's not something that you can learn traditionally, and they're not separate. You can't separate the two of them. They are two halves of the same whole, two sides of the same coin. Spirituality is very much an intuitive and logical process, a pursuit, so to speak. That was something that kind of came later. When I initially pursued spirituality, it was completely with logic and rational mind. And so when I first started searching for proof, I wanted it to be physical evidence. I wanted it to be hard, solid, and concrete. And at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I used to tell myself all the time that there was no point in trying to figure out what happened after you die, because you just figure it out when you die and you should focus on living. If you couldn't tell by the fact I made this video, I obviously do think that there is some justifiable reason for learning about death while we're living. When you change the way you think about dying, you also change the way you think about living. And that is what is so important about spirituality, and why I think it's such an important part of life. Because instead of ignoring the fact that you're going to die, you instead face that fear head on and start trying to understand and possibly change your idea of what dying even means. It completely changes your entire life. In this way, we can start to see how all our pain and fears and anxiety and suffering are more like little smudges on our lenses of perception. And if we can adjust our focus just a little bit and decondition ourselves from what we think is going on, we can see what's actually going on with clarity and depth. That's something I was hoping to do with my YouTube channel, is to show people that there really is something to this. A lot of people will try and say that spirituality is something that can't be understood with your 5 senses, or 6, whatever you want to say. But I'm here to say that there actually are some parts of it that you can understand with your logical and rational mind. There are actually 3 things that have been the most compelling spiritual evidence that you can understand with your logical and rational mind. And I think it's an important thing to consider, because it kind of opens the door to being able to really have a full spiritual understanding. And researching these 3 things in depth is what's really allowed me to change the way I see the world and my lens of perception. And these 3 things are something that I'm going to talk about in another video. So if you'd like to learn more about what these things are and change your perspective on living, then go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.
What do I mean by reality?